I'm really excited to welcome two new guests to our podcast series, Digital Mental Health Musings, which is also our first one for 2022. So thank you very much to Jane Austin and Lyndal Sherwin, who are joining us from the TheMHS Learning Network, which is a network for improving mental health services across both Australia and New Zealand. So welcome and thank you for joining us, Jane and Lyndal.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you.
So before we kind of get started talking about TheMHS, just a quick background of information for people who are listening. So Jane is Executive Director of TheMHS and has a background in health organisation management for the last 20 years. So that's included a whole range of roles at the George Institute for Global Health, Royal Flying Doctor Service, and also held board positions, including as Director of the Asthma Foundation of New South Wales. So her work has spanned the UK, Australia and New Zealand, and in recent years she's volunteered at a phone counselling service, really supporting people living with social isolation, suicidal ideation and mental distress. So a really broad scope of experience there, both at the organisational level but also at the front line in terms of your recent and past work. So that's Jane. Lyndal is the TheMHS Awards Manager, and Lyndal comes with a background as an occupational therapist and holds close to 20 years experience working both as a mental health clinician and also a health services manager. So that's within acute, community and also forensic mental health services, both again in Australia and the UK. Her personal passion is around trauma-informed, recovery-oriented service provision. And really placed at the forefront of that is lived experience and expertise. So again, heaps of experience to come and bring and talk about within this podcast and how it relates to the theme. So thank you again, both Jane and Lyndal. So let's get started. I guess a logical starting point is to get a bit of a sense of how TheMHS came about, what the history of it is, and specifically what you would want people to know in terms of what the Learning Network aims to achieve, both across Australia and New Zealand. And I'll throw that to whoever wants to respond.
I'll start if you like, Ruth, and I'm sure Lyndal will have a perspective on this as well. But to go back to the origins of TheMHS, we have to travel back in time quite a long way to the days before Google, before eBay, and before internet phones. So we're going back about 31 years. To a time when a small group of psychiatrists who were attending a conference sort of got together and said, actually, this is all very well and good, but what we really would love to see is a much broader conference with different people across mental health services participating and contributing. It shouldn't just be about, individuals and their work and individual professions. It should be about the whole piece. So they got together with some other people and they started up their first mental health conference. And that was back in 1991. And that was in Adelaide in South Australia. And that was very successful. And it happened at a really interesting time because, to put it this way, reform was in the air, so to speak. So almost at the same time, there were discussions going on about reform in government. And very soon after that, the first mental health plan was launched. So it's almost like these things sort of all kind of came together at the right time. So I should mention also, I think, a couple of the names of people who were involved in those very, very early days, because they are still with TheMHS. And so the founders of TheMHS back then were Alan Rosen, a psychiatrist, and Viv Miller, an occupational therapist. And they basically, together with Roger Kerr, they were the sort of the core group that founded TheMHS, and they're still involved. And in fact, many of the people who sit on our board are also very involved now and were involved 20, 30 years ago. So it's an organisation, I guess, with a lot of history and a lot of background. Lyndal may also have her own experiences of her connection to TheMHS as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think before I even came on board, formally with TheMHS in a formal role, as a clinician and someone working in the sector, I've always really valued and been involved in whether it's attending or presenting at TheMHS. And I think what has drawn me to themes is this, it's so different to any other conference. Like I've always said, I think it's my most favourite conference of the year. And because it does place that lived experience and expertise at the centre, which was something that when I remember my first themes, just being blown away, by the different experiences that were elevated and on the platform and really challenged me as a clinician and the way that I saw my role in supporting someone through mental health recovery, and just opened my mind to actually what's really important and actually who the experts are in this space. So, themes holds a very dear place in my heart. So I'm really stoked to be able to now be in this role supporting the awards program with themes as well.
Awesome. And I think going back to what you said as well, recently has been that the dialogue or narrative around the importance of that lived experience has kind of emerged more recently. And I'm thinking back in 91, maybe that wasn't necessarily as big a stronger part of themes. Am I right in saying that? Is that
well
not
actually,
necessarily?
No, I'd say themes were probably pioneers of this. And after the first conference, a group of consumers who'd attended that conference got together and said, actually, we want to take this even further. We want to have our own day associated with the conference. And so since then, themes conferences have always had a whole day. We call it the pre-conference day. And we have a consumer forum and a carer forum on that day. And those are designed, run and managed by consumers for the consumer forum and carers for the carer forum. So it's been sort of a real hallmark, actually, of the themes experience.
Yeah, I think you're right then when you say that, in terms of being at the forefront of driving that and enabling that to happen. Well, just sort of moving forward from that, the goals of themes. Obviously, it's a learning network. Could you talk us a little bit around what the goals of themes actually look like?
I guess it's evolved from that original conference. So it used to be very much a conference organization. And then at some point in its evolution, it realized it was more than that. It was doing a number of different things. So if we break those down into the different areas, we're definitely about creating shared multidisciplinary learning opportunities for everyone in mental health, particularly people who work in mental health. And doing that in a way that really actively engages people with experience. But we're also about inspiring mental health service reforms that support full participation in society. So in terms of that particular piece, themes was quite instrumental in advocating for and supporting the setting up of mental health commissions in Australia. Because something I should mention is that themes isn't just Australian, it actually bridges into New Zealand as well. So there's a lot of cross-fertilisation that happens in themes events between Australia and New Zealand, and opportunities for those countries to learn from each other. And Australia, people in Themes Australia had seen New Zealand setting up mental health commissions, and that was later adopted in Australia. And that's just one example of this focus on let's keep moving forward and progressing the system and the services. And then finally, of course, the bit that Lyndal is very much involved in is recognising the excellence and quality in research and practice through the awards program.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll certainly talk through that a little bit more, Lyndal, shortly. I wanted to just, so it's kind of left of centre maybe, but I'm wondering if there's similar models to this that you're aware of that are adopted elsewhere. Does the UK have a similar thing, or the US, or maybe you're not sure because I've just thrown this in from nowhere? It was designed, it wasn't basically developed on a model. It just naturally evolved here by the sounds of things.
I think it was slightly developed on an American model, but it's also at the same time taken its own track. I think there was an American psychiatric organization that was gravitating towards this type of model, and themes picked up on that quite quickly because we have very strong linkages globally, including with America. So we evolved from there, but I think we've taken it actually to new levels. I'm not actually sure about the UK or anywhere else. I'm not sure if you are more across that than I am, Lyndal.
No, but I mean, I guess Themes has always had, as Jane was saying, a strong connection internationally and bringing international speakers and expertise onto the stage as well. So whilst it's, you know, focused on Australia and New Zealand, there is that outward kind of global aspect to it as well.
Mentioning the conferences, and you talked about that underlying theme and ethos about the lived experience and where that sort of fits within themes. So there's more recent conferences, obviously the lived experience is still embedded within that, but there's a shift towards, or there seems to be, navigating complexity. So it's looking at integrating the health system, which we know needs a little bit of work doing on it. Is that kind of core been through the previous years, or is that really quite new to this year and possibly in response to COVID, I guess I'm wondering?
I think there's probably always been an element of that, but I think previous themes, I think the first theme was focusing on mental health services between now and the year 2000, because it was in 1991, and other ones have focused on things like status quo to go was the title of one, and there's no health without mental health. So some quite generic themes. I think navigating complexity and embedding the integration that makes a difference is really a theme for our times, because even with improvements in the system, we've got sort of innovation upon innovation and increased complexity, not just for people accessing mental health services, but also for the workforce as well. So we've had quite a lot of complexity coming through our learning events recently. We had a webinar series last year. An Australian GP, Adrian Plaskett, had written a piece in The Guardian about how incredibly difficult it was as a GP to be able to connect his patients to mental health services and support. And he was making the point that, 10, 20 years ago, he used to be able to do that quite easily because there were local numbers, local services, and he could just put his patients in touch with those. And he can't do that anymore. And he feels quite, he felt quite sort of distanced from the ability to be able to connect people to services. And we basically had a whole webinar on that. And that led to some very, very, fruitful conversations. We're just doing a forum around psychosocial services in a really complex environment. So it does seem like this complexity is the theme for the times. Lyndal, you might have some views on that because you were also involved in the development of the theme.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. It's the complexity. It's it's recognizing that, supporting someone's mental health well-being or mental health recovery is more than just the mental health sector as well. And there are lots of things that contribute to someone's mental well-being. Therefore, we do need to collaborate and work in partnership with a bunch of different sectors, but that's complex in itself. And consumers and families and carers also need to interface with a bunch of different services, and that kind of those edges between services is a really tricky space, and we don't always partner well, communicate well. Sometimes there's duplication of services, sometimes there's gaps. And so it's recognizing that that's a really important space to be operating in. And we need to do that well to really be able to support people and help people navigate those spaces and services to navigate those spaces. So I think it really is a poignant theme for the time. Yeah.
It's ironic, isn't it? Because you're talking about the complexity of the mental health system, but it's also the complexity of the individual and how we just can't treat symptoms. There's the whole spectrum from primary prevention all the way through, and the nutrition, housing, school, all those components. I'd be interested. Sorry, go on, Jo.
I was just going to say, I think it's worth mentioning here, this themes, we don't just come up with this on our own. We form quite a large local, we call it a local organising committee, and we have partner organisations that basically help with the development of the main conference. And this year it's Northern Sydney LHD, Mental Health Australia, and the Mental Health Coordinating Council. So those are the organisations, and they're all absolutely in that space of, yes, we need something around navigating complexity and embedding integration.
I'm going to ask this question just because you're familiar with our e-mental health in practice work. For us, there's been that real interest in the last couple of years, especially since the pandemic, in integration of digital mental health tools. And I'm wondering your thoughts on what you've kind of, probably the wrong word, but almost been exposed to, and in all the conversations that you've had with people that are involved with themes around the role of digital mental health which is in itself perceived to be complex within an already complex system.
It's becoming really critically important that these services can be delivered, because what we've all learned during COVID, and this is where these digital and blended services have had a real upturn, is this concept of connected care is really, really important, and equitable access to services and integration with the main system. These are all critical things, and having a national digital framework with a national digital platform that can support all of this. So those conversations have definitely been going on in themes and around themes, and we see it as critical. And in fact, in a conversation with our organising committee recently about the sorts of featured symposia we want in the conference, this is a suggested featured symposia topic, and it will almost certainly make it into the conference.
Especially at a time when people are really struggling to access mental health services more than previously.
Absolutely.
Psychiatrists, waiting lists, psychologists, it's certainly a time for integration, I think.
Yeah.
Have you touched on this before, but have you noticed any shifts in the direction of themes since the start of the pandemic or not? Yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I guess in answer to that, I'd say the model for themes before the pandemic was essentially 2 major events a year, both face-to-face. Well, I mean, that sort of had to go by the board, and we had to sort of reinvent the model of how to engage with people in the community, because, people delivering services, and Lyndal would be a really good example of this, were under huge pressure during this time with additional demand, additional complexity, and needed to be supported in their own way to come together. So we actually had to take 2 conferences online, which was a huge learning curve for us, but we now probably consider ourselves semi-experts at this. Yep. So we've had 2 major conferences, we took them online, and in a way you learn so much about that in itself, back to your point about digital mental health services, creating an accessibility that may not always have been there before. So we got lots of positive feedback about that. And then we introduced 2 webinar series during 2020-2021. One is a free one, that's called Constructive Conversations, where we address some of the big issues that are sort of on top of people's minds in the mental health sector. And the first webinar had over 600 registrations. And so they were very popular, very popular. And then we also introduced a more educational series called Learning Live. And the first series of that, there was a series of 3 on mental health, drug and alcohol and addiction. And we partnered with the Matilda Centre to do that webinar series. And again, very, very popular. And that's how we just felt we needed to help the community stay connected, stay in learning mode at such a difficult time. But Lyndal, you might want to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think themes have done this really well in that in the sector as clinicians, there's multiple, and there continues to be multiple demands as we grapple with, staff having to be in isolation, breakouts happening in different services, things cancelled all the time. These kind of, often we have to funnel down to the frontline service provision and that work, and that becomes really important. But the stuff around the growth stuff around learning and, engaging with learning and development opportunities, so many things are cancelled over the last couple of years. So for themes to be able to continue to offer something in the online space that's accessible, that's relevant, was hugely important and hugely impactful. And I know a number of services and across the sector are really thankful for that.
I'm wondering, that leads quite nicely into a question, or having a bit of a chat about the awards Lyndal, that you're manager for? Because I'm thinking, in terms of submissions for that and awards that have been given, you see a whole range of innovations and projects, services, work that's happening. Can you talk to us a little bit about what some of those look like and what you look for, basically?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and I guess just piggybacking off that previous conversation, the TheMHS Awards marries up with the rest of the aims of the TheMHS Learning Network in really wanting to recognise and honour the incredible work that does happen, with individuals, with teams, with services across Australia and New Zealand. And especially at these times, we see that as really important, that's really important to name and honour those people and services who are really contributing to the mental wellbeing of communities across the two nations. So we do see that's really important in bringing a sense of hopefulness in these really tricky times and affirming strengths and passions across the sector. So we get a number of organisations and individuals making submissions across kind of public health sector to NGOs to outside of the mental health sector. And so we do welcome and receive a very diverse number of submissions. It's probably helpful to talk about the different categories because that might help kind of flesh that out. So we do have 6 award categories. We have an award category for services and programs, and within that category we have a number of subcategories as well, which covers clinical services to psychosocial support to mental health promotion and illness prevention, education, lived experience leadership, and that kind of thing. And then we have an exceptional contribution award, which is for an individual. We have research awards, and we have a new last year award called Wellbeing in the Workplace, which really seeks to recognise all organisations outside of the mental health sector as well that are really looking at the well-being of their workforce and recognising that focusing on the well-being of the workforce contributes to the outcomes of that service, but also contributes to the broader community around mental well-being. So last year we launched that category, that award, and Air New Zealand won that award, which was really exciting. And then we have our media awards as well. So we've had a number of winners across those awards, from NGO sector to LHDs. One of the first exceptional contribution award winners was Patrick McGorry, who many people will be very familiar with. We've had, in terms of the media awards, we've had the ABC win awards, we've had particular individuals win awards. You guys have won an award, and the Black Dog Institute in the various categories under services and programs. So we do see a number of different organisations, and also recognising last year one of the particular winners in mental health promotion as well was the Arts Centre in Melbourne, and I thought that was really exciting for those guys to receive an award, because it's recognising the importance of the arts sector and the creative sector for mental wellbeing, and so that I think was a really great way to recognise that and honour the work that they're doing too.
Yeah, and especially, again, I think the timeliness of that around COVID, and, the resource has been pulled and various different industries really struggling. Timing of that was really key. And I guess from our perspective, you mentioned that we won the award. It's, again, that recognition that work is making a difference is invaluable. And you kind of know when you're doing the work, but, it's that external recognition, I guess, that's so meaningful.
Yeah, I might just talk briefly just mention that went online with the conference last time, and we brought in a DJ to do a DJ set, and we had watch parties of people all over Australia and New Zealand, and it was so much fun. And we weren't sure how it was going to go, but actually people didn't want to leave. And in the chat, we could see people saying, look, I'm up from my computer and I'm dancing. Yes. I haven't danced for over a year, but I am up and dancing to this awards ceremony music.
What a great outcome that you would never have planned for, probably.
No, not at all. And just, trying to think through how to make that awards ceremony engaging, and wondering how on earth we were going to do that in the online space. It was beautiful, and it really, speaks to the ability to be able to bring people together, even in a different and strange kind of way. Was really great.
Yeah, and it really emphasizes again that importance of connection and laughter and meaning and underlying that. Lyndal, I just going to ask, because I think the date for applications for awards is currently, it's open, isn't it?
Yep. So it's the awards program is open at the moment. So we welcome people to make submissions, and they can do that via the website, the themes website, and there's all the information there that you need to make a submission. So anyone listening, go for it, make a submission.
That's good. And we'll put the website link up as well underneath this recording when it goes online. I guess just to finish up, maybe give us an idea what people can expect from the conference this year. People who are thinking, I might well go to that.
Well, I think you get the classic themes ingredients, which are a mix of very different presentations, a broad range of perspectives, probably the broadest you'll ever encounter in a mental health conference. And that's where a lot of the richness lies. Yeah. There'll also be a lot of fun. So music, poetry, arts, creativity are considered a crucial part of a themes conference. And I know that the Consumer Forum this year are already going to host a Mad Pride event, which will be absolutely fantastic. I think you can expect a really diverse and rich range of symposia that address the theme, some fabulous keynote speakers, and lots of ideas about what's working, because it's not just about all the problems. There will be some hard conversations about the issues and problems, but there'll also be lots of sharing about programs and initiatives all over Australia and New Zealand that are navigating complexity and building integration with other parts of mental health, but also with other human services outside mental health. And on the subject of deadlines, I'll just mention, Ruth, that the abstract submissions for this conference are open as well, and they close on the 13th of May. And again, people right across the sector can submit an abstract via our online portal at our website. So again, all contributions very welcome.
So we'll also.
And I will say too that there's going to be an awesome awards ceremony as well.
More dance.
Hopefully in person.
More dance.
Real dancing.
I really like that point you made there now, Jane, about there's a lot of complaining about what doesn't work, but there is also so much stuff that's working really well and some amazing work out there, which
absolutely.
Obviously themes is a beautiful vehicle to be able to recognize that and bring all those people together and go, yeah, maybe that's not right, but this stuff, look at what's here. Any final points that we've not really covered or that you'd like to mention?
Just leading on from what you just said, I think, Ruth, is this shared learning gets to be very practical and very real, because people will hear about something from another part of the country or from New Zealand, and they'll take it back into their organizations and they'll start sort of growing something within their own organization or exploring how they can make something happen there. And I think that's really, really powerful. And then the other thing, I just read a lovely comment recently from someone who'd been attending themes conferences for many, many years. And she said, it's like coming home for Christmas and seeing your family, which I thought was just the most beautiful. I see many, many positive things about why people keep coming to themes conferences, but I thought that really was, just the most beautiful comment I'd ever read.
Yeah, absolutely.
Coming home, seeing the family.
Yeah, and I guess because it's been running such a long time, there'll be sort of, obviously, I'm assuming some people who've been coming for a long time and make same catch-ups, same connections, and new ones.
And new ones as well. Yes. Yeah.
So further from what we were talking before, Jane and Lyndal, can you give us some idea of the type of delegates or people that are that usually attend the themes conference each year? Who is this sort of aimed at, shall we say?
I mean, it's a really rich and diverse group of people, Ruth. So consumers and carers are a large group that attends the conference. But also we do have clinicians in various roles, service managers, educators, researchers. There's a very broad range of people, and they attend because it's the place where they can come together They can talk to each other. They might actually come from different perspectives, but they get to build a shared understanding of each other's perspectives and to learn from each other. Lyndal, I may have missed some groups out.
Yeah, that's something that drew me to themes in the beginning as well. It's this co-learning environment that is so unique. Often things are either geared towards a clinical expertise or an organisational expertise, and then the lived expertise is somewhat separate. But I just love the way that themes brings all of the different perspectives together and honours all of them as being of equal value. And I think that's a really unique thing, and that is what keeps me coming back to themes, because I don't get that anywhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess just to round up, just to say thank you so much for coming on and just sharing the fantastic work that's happening through themes. All the best for the conference for this year, and we'll perhaps see you there, because we're in person this year. Is that right?
We absolutely are, Ruth, and we'd love to see you there. Yes.
Sounds good. Thank you both again for joining us and having this conversation.
Thank you.